Welcome back to Proper Madness. I'm happy to have you back if you're a returning listener. If you're a new listener, my name is Sabby, and I have a very unique perspective on mental health. I believe wholeheartedly that we can turn anything that we have been through and alchemize it into bettering ourselves mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. I also get to have the wonderful chance to speak to some amazing individuals, all very unique in their own stories from all around the world. They get to tell their lives, their stories, their hardships, and how they've overcome it. It helps you feel less alone, to know and understand that the way out is always through the eye of the storm, no matter how much we like to avoid it. Grab a cup of tea. If you're not a tea drinker, grab your coffee, and let's sit down and tune into ourselves so that we can learn to connect to other people. We never know the weight of our words and how they might help someone. I don't know if I really need to introduce you. I think you can introduce you. The last time you were on here was, oh boy, was it almost 2 years, a year and a half, 2 years?
That was it was like 2 years ago, I think, which is
Jeez.
so crazy. Oh my God.
The journey and the
The
growth from
journey.
that, I think will be really exciting to see. So, everyone, welcome back to Proper Madness. If you're familiar with my podcast, I have Jane on, who is a very dear friend of mine. She has returned because she's doing some pretty amazing things. She always is, but she's doing some things right now that I think would be very beneficial to talk about and hear about, especially where I am in my life and where a lot of people in the community are in terms of learning about this. So I'll let her kind of introduce herself to you and what she's about, and then, yeah.
Yes, thank you. I'm so happy to be back, Savi. I'm Jane. My Instagram handle is Bikini in a Bikini. That's how a lot of people refer to me. And I'm a full-time energy master. So that's the work I do. I specifically work with the queer community. I'm a Buddhist practitioner, so a lot of my work is kind of rooted in that ancient practice. And yeah, I read the Akashic records. I am very obsessed with polarity, which I think we're going to be getting into a little bit today. And just energy mastery in general is a way of not only healing, but embodying the life that you want to live and waking up every day feeling your best. So I'm very happy to be back. It's Dude, the last time I was on your show, I was like freshly out of a 4-year breakup, still living in the same house as my ex. Like, remembering back on the day I was on your show, I'm like, whoa. It was like before I started my like digital nomad journey. And oh my God, I was like so heartbroken and down. And I remember being on that show with you, being like, I like this girl. She's nice.
Oh, I remember that too. Yeah, it's so weird to think that even just like almost 2 years ago, we were babies, which is strange because I mean, I don't think age matters in terms of like how you grow. It's just like whatever experience you're in at that time. And I think the experiences we were both in at that time were kind of like, I don't want to say an infant stage, but maybe like adolescent. And then and
Yeah.
then we kind of like did our own things. And I think to come back together in this space is going to be pretty cool. It'll be fun.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we have matured over the last 2 years.
Yeah, one of us went through like 3 identity crises in 2 years.
I was living in Utah in my hometown, 5 minutes away from the house I grew up in, and now I live in Mexico full time. So, we couldn't have gone through much more transformation than we have in 2 years.
No, no, not at all. Um, I think I don't know. I'm excited. So,
Yeah.
okay. The beloved topic that I think, and we can dissect this however which way you'd like to. But I think the most prominent topic right now is masculine and feminine energy and being in your masculine and being in your feminine energy.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Um, I can tell you like where I'm at with it, and then you can say whatever you can course correct me, whatever you gotta do. Um,
Sounds good.
but I think For me personally, right, for my journey, even we can use my identity crises as like an example. I was very much in a almost wounded masculine energy, this sort of like
Mhm.
peacocking sort of thing of, hey,
Mhm.
look at me, I want this attention, and I
Mhm.
want to be seen, and I want to work really hard and obtain all these goals from a wounded standpoint. And then
Mm.
all of a sudden, there was a big shift into some very feminine energy, like coming in more soft,
Mm.
leading with feeling and intuition as opposed to like
Mhm.
strong arming everything and having
Mhm.
to force everything. So that's where I'm at with it. For me, I see it, and I'm or I guess the most active way I've been living through it is through my dating life.
Mhm.
The types of men that I used to date were very much in their feminine, and then all of a
Mm.
sudden, I started
Interesting.
yeah, I all of a sudden we talked about this briefly, but last year I dated someone who's very much in a masculine energy, and it kinda just drop kicked me into, like, healing my feminine energy. 'Cause
Mm. Mhm.
anytime I even tried to be in my masculine, this boy would kind of lean into me a little bit more and be more receptive. The second I
Yeah.
tried to
Mhm.
direct or lead, he was like,
Mhm.
"No,
Mhm.
absolutely not."
Oh, I love it. I think those are all really beautiful reflections, and I agree with all of it. I have no corrections to be made. But the interesting thing that you bring up about masculine and feminine energies, and the way that I teach it, is that we show up in those energies in three different ways.
Mm,
And we can apply this to everything, but I think it's easier when we break it down to the sacral authority of how we work, our career, how we make our money, how we date, and then how we have sex.
mm.
And we can throw up, that was
I mean, I
weird.
hope you don't throw up.
Not
That's
sure
why
why
I
that
mean,
word just came out.
hey.
We can show up in our different energies differently in each of these, right? So when I
Mm,
think of my friend Sabi, I think of someone who is actually very much in her masculine all the time, right?
mhm,
Like, you work in a corporate world, you work around a lot of men, you have to show up very masculine in order to do what you got to do every day. And even someone like me, even though I run a very feminine business because I'm a healer, I run my own business and I have to be in that masculine all day, holding space for clients, holding people in their emotions, making decisions, making money, right? And so we can kind of notice that we're a little bit, whereas maybe if I were an artist and I just woke up every day and I got to paint all day, that would be a very feminine approach to working. So there's that. And then I think a lot of people, what they mistake is like, oh, because Sabi's in her masculine all day, she wants to be in her masculine when she's dating.
mm.
But we don't know that. And,
No.
and
I'm like, "You
I,
need to tell me what to do.
right,
I don't wanna tell you what to do, please."
right,
Yeah.
exactly. And that's how most women are. And
Mhm,
the easiest way that I like to kind of help people figure out what they prefer when it comes to dating is like, if you're out at a club or a coffee shop or a bar or whatever, and you see someone that you find attractive, are you gonna like sit back and just try to like look beautiful and like magnetize them to approaching you? Would you want them to approach you and pursue you?
mm,
Or when you see someone, are you like, I'm gonna go talk to them, I'm gonna go get them? And you can see even in my body language, like, the feminine wants to be pursued. You want someone to approach you and ask you out and kind of
mm,
like vie for your affection. Whereas someone who's in their masculine is gonna like be very penetrative, go right up to someone and be like, hey, I like you. Can I take you out? That's
mm.
a masculine energy, right? And so which would you prefer, Savi?
Uh, so what's interesting is because 'cause I'm reflecting now, is, like, for me personally, I'm all like, with dating, I'm very much in my feminine. I'm like, "No, you come to me." But
Mm-hmm.
I'll do what I've learned recently from a friend of mine is you drop the woman drops the handkerchief, right? She goes, "Hey, okay, I see you. I kinda want you, so I'm gonna give you, like, some sort of sign or signal of, like, 'Hey, I like you,' and then you come to me."
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I did this by accident at the gym. Oh my god. I did this actually 2 days ago. I was just testing it. I was like, "Wonder if it would work." But I was, working out, and then I saw a lovely man, and I just smiled. That's it. I just made eye contact and smiled, and this
That's
dude
it.
made a beeline, like, straight for me. And then I realized very quickly that I need to get my prescription filled with my glasses because when it came closer, I was like, no, never mind.
You're like, never mind. I forgot to put on my glasses today.
No,
But that's
yeah.
great.
I think the woman has to drop the handkerchief and then signal, if you're in your feminine, and then the masculine energy does pursue. What's interesting is when you said that mentally, I was like, you know what? I think people can have these appearances and energetic personas and almost personality of masculine, but maybe the way that they want to be pursued is feminine, which is interesting.
Yeah, and something that I've learned about myself in the last year is like, if you asked me these questions about myself like 6 months ago, I'd be like, oh, I'm always in my masculine. Like, I will ask you out on a date. I will plan the date. I will pick you up. I will make the decisions. I will set the structure. I will make the plans. And I don't want to be pursued. I've never liked that. And then this summer, I went on a date with a girl in Tokyo, and like, she pursued me. She was very clear that she was interested in me. She planned the date. She set the time. She asked if it would work. She chose where we were going to go. When I got there, I didn't speak Japanese. So she ordered my drink for me and then paid. And I had the weirdest moment of like, oh God, she is in her masculine and I have to let her. Because, excuse me, how much of a turnoff would it be to her if I was like, no, actually, I want to go to this place. And no, actually, like, I'll order my own drink. And no, actually, like, and first of all, she'd be like, so you're in my city right now and you actually don't know anything. And I'm the one making the plans. And that's where this kind of polarity can be depolarizing, is if I showed up and I was like, no, actually, I'm making the plan, I'm setting the structure, I'm getting the bill, then we would have depolarized. She would have been like, oh, she doesn't trust me. She must not trust me. She's not receiving me. It immediately depolarizes. And I can remember so like vividly kind of rolling back on my heels and being like, okay, Jane, if you want this date to go well, you need to be in your feminine and you need to let her lead the way.
Oh my God, that's
And I was so resistant.
That's so weird that you're saying that, because that's the same thing with this person that I was seeing. Of like, I legit had to lean back, I had to express my feelings, and I had to say, this is how I feel. There was no logical masculine anything of planning.
Yeah. Yeah. And I had to roll back on my heels, and I literally consciously was like, okay, you're going to let her lead the way tonight, and you're going to see if you feel safe with her, because that's what I realized. Jane, you don't feel safe with people. And so you're always in your masculine because that makes you feel safer. And I realized it's this big protection mechanism. And then I have this amazing night with this girl because she has this like very strong, healthy masculine energy. And I realize I feel safe with her. And then once you're safe with that masculine energy as the feminine, it's your job to feel, to be beautiful, to be adorable, to be attractive, to just be the center of the attention, right? Because you're safe and you don't have to be like holding the space as a masculine energy would. So what might have been happening with this last guy that you were with is, and that's where it can be really hard. That's where some of these wounded things can come in. Like, I was definitely in a little bit of a wounded masculine energy of wanting to keep, well, you know what? This is where it gets sticky. I think that when we go into a wounded feminine energy, we put up this masculine wall to keep ourselves safe. And that comes back to a daddy wound where it's like, my dad never made me feel safe, so I don't feel safe. So I'm going to live in my masculine 24/7. And it's actually coming from a wounded feminine space. And so it has all these interesting energetics interplaying where this man that you were dating, he might be a very masculine energy, but he might not know how to fully embody his masculine energy. So he comes off as feminine, and it might be a wounded masculine where like his mother didn't nurture him, so he doesn't know how to like emotionally care for himself. And so he's like soft when he should be strong. He's, indecisive when he should be making plans. And, the thing I'm always saying when I'm teaching polarity is like, a man with a plan will get the feminine every single time. It's really not.
It's true. Yeah, he definitely like it was a long distance-ish thing. Um, and anytime like I would go see him, he made the plans. He's like, "This is what we're doing. This is," and so when I was physically with him, I felt very safe and in my feminine. There was no room for
Mhm.
masculinity. But when I
Mhm.
was away from him, oh
Mm.
boy. When I was away from him, suddenly this all these deep wounds, it's father wound for sure, of I
Mhm.
don't feel emotionally safe because I'm physically away
Mhm.
from you. It's
Mhm.
now either coming across as like me going, "Oh my God, I need all this reassurance," and then attachment styles come into play.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then also kind of realizing and understand that now that I have this space, all these emotions are coming up and I don't know what to do with them. So they're just kind of
Mhm.
sitting there, and anytime he asks me, "Oh, how are you? Like, how's your day?" I would give him facts. I wouldn't tell
Mm.
him like, "Oh, this is," like a more feminine approach of, "Hey, I did this and this is how I felt about it."
Mhm.
But I was almost like monitoring how I said things and the way I said things. It
Mhm.
was
Mhm.
I'd had to take a step back and go, "Okay, this is what I wanna say to him. How the hell do I rephrase it in a way that's more feminine, that's actually gonna elicit, like, receptivity from him?" And then even at that point, it's like, if I'm having to sit there and plan what I say and how I say it, like, then
Yeah.
it's not like, that's not good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Things are not flowing, and that's where we do want to be able to do that dance of like, and this is where I think a lot of people get polarity wrong, is like being in your feminine means sharing your emotions,
Mm,
sharing what you're feeling, and being in them. And then the masculine energy holds structure and safety and stability. And it needs to be able to go back and forth. And, there's this story in the queer community where, like, two gay girls, their relationship will fall apart because one girl is in their feminine. And
mm.
then the other one is like, I'm going to be in my feminine with you. And then we're both going to have a meltdown. And then the relationship falls apart, you know?
Yeah,
Because and this is where, like, people in straight relationships, women, for example, I see a lot of women struggle with this. If your man, your masculine energy, the partner you have, is in his emotions and is in his feelings, women tend to get really afraid because
yeah.
historically, men in their emotions doesn't lead us to feeling safe. And for men, being in their emotions, they've never been allowed to. They get
Mm,
scared, right? So for women to be able to get really actually strong in those moments and say, "Hey, babe, I see that you're feeling a lot right now. Like, I'm here. You're safe with me. Like, I'm not afraid of this. Like, what's going on? Talk to
yeah,
me." And that's when that role reversal is really, really important, so that the man can be in his feminine and
yeah.
can feel safe. And a lot of these tantric communities here where I live in Mexico are like, "No, no, 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 no. You can't role reverse that way. We got to stay in the gender binary 24/7."
Mm.
And I think that actually is where this conversation of polarity can be really damaging.
Yeah, 100%. I think men, because there's a lot right now in the community, in just the community with that, but also like almost this other very, I don't even know how to describe it, but like the age of like the 70s and the 60s of like pure femininity and pure masculinity is finally kind of coming back, which is beautiful. You don't
Mm-hmm.
have as many men in like a wounded feminine anymore,
Mm-hmm.
which is the most aggravating thing in the world as a straight woman.
Yeah.
But so that primal masculinity is coming back. But I think to your
Mm-hmm.
point, now it's like, okay, I have this primal masculinity, but how do I shift and lean into those emotions and lean into my healthy feminine? I think
Mm-hmm.
those very primal masculine men neglect that part because that is what helps, I think, a woman feel a little bit more close to you is like, yeah, my man's a man, or like whoever I'm dating is in their masculine, but at the same time, I also kind of want to see your side so I feel close to you so that we can develop
Mm-hmm.
that connection. And I think that's really
Mm-hmm.
important. I think very masculine energies do neglect that, right? They kind of go,
Oh yeah.
no, I must always hold space and be the protector, and I must always be there for my woman. Yes, but it's okay also for you to allow space to be supported, you know?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And that's where I teach a course called Queer Polarity, and it's not because it's for queer people, it's because I think that this new age tantra, these new age conversations about polarity and tantra are just reaffirming that gender binary that like
Mm.
started in the 1950s with like the ideal man and the ideal woman and like staying there and staying that way. When really I come from a tantric Buddhist lineage where our whole goal is to become genderless and
Yeah.
to be such a blend of the divine feminine and the divine masculine so that we are really harmonizing with each other and we don't have this like I think that the gender binary is like creating so much. It's the reason why men are so lonely and
Yeah.
can't get a date and why women have just completely given up on dating in general.
It's true. Yeah, I think
It's this.
yeah, you have because you have both, right? You have like there's a creator I just started following who's become a friend of mine, and he keeps telling me that women are being innately lazy in their dating life, right? They just want men to come up to them all the time, every which way, which is true. I think like women now expect, especially if you're in your feminine energy, they expect men to just flock to them with like zero effort involved. But you do have to drop the proverbial handkerchief.
Handkerchief. I love this proverbial handkerchief.
Um, I just like I honestly just envisioned this Victorian woman and like
Yep.
a bodice and a dress, and she's just like that one, you
Signaling.
know? Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but what he talks about is similar to you. I think there's this very weird polarity that's happening where that's coming back, like we said, but it's so divided now that no one
Mm-hmm.
wants to lean into the other sides of their energy, which you have to.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
have to be both masculine and feminine. You just obviously you can have a little bit of more than the other in order to lean into one more so. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
to be in the divine masculine and the divine feminine is to be a whole person on your own, right? In a
Yeah.
sense. And
Yeah.
then you have to you tend to gravitate and attract people who are doing the same, who are in the same.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I think that that wholeness, that completeness is very necessary, like you said at the beginning, where you have different energies in different aspects of your life, and that's okay. I
Mm-hmm.
think I think dropping into just only being in your feminine all the time is wonderful, but at the same time, it's like, where's the structure? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
You need
Yeah.
some structure to get things done in your life. Like when you become a mother or you have kids, or like, this is how I
Mhm.
think. I have to have some form of masculine energy in order to like raise my children and do what I need to get done and
Mhm.
care for them in some way. I cannot just be sitting back in my feminine going, you know, kids, you just raise yourselves. Everything will flow as the wind flows.
It's all just gonna flow. Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's so funny because that's like my friends who date men around this town. That's like their number one complaint is that everyone just wants to flow. Like, we'll just flow with it. And I'm like, again, a man with a plan gets the woman. It's really not that hard.
Yes.
But, we cannot, and this is where like the prominence of like divine feminine work is very similar to me as like the third wave of feminism, which I'm a feminist 100%, but we're so focused on raising up the feminine. We're
Mm.
so focused on getting more women in education. We're so focused on more women embodying their divine feminine and being in their wildness and being in their chaos and all of that. And then it's like, does anyone want to help the men do better?
Yeah.
Does anyone want to help the masculine energy rise also?
Yeah.
So, like, we're having this problem that I teach about in my courses where, like, women are pressed to live in their feminine, women are pressed to be the most successful. All of like the third wave of feminism has really raised women up. And then it's like, men are more depressed than ever. Men are lonelier than ever. Men don't feel like they know how to talk to women. Men feel like they don't know how to hold space for women.
Mm.
And women have just completely been like, yeah, bye, men. And then there's all these women who are in their divine feminine all the time, but like they can't make any money. They don't have
Mm.
any structure. They can't stay consistent in anything because they want to live in their divine feminine all the time. But like, you can't. You
Yeah.
have to find a flow. We all have to find a flow. And I'm very big on helping women actually embody their divine masculine so
Hmm.
that then men can feel safe with us and we can start kind of pulling down
Yes.
some of these walls that we've created.
Oh, you said exactly what I was thinking. I think men don't feel safe with us because of that third wave feminism where women are like, I can do everything on my own and I don't need men. It's almost like the third wave of feminism is pushing masculinity away so they don't feel safe with us and they don't feel like they can embody some portion of their femininity in some way in order to open up. And I think it's really sad.
Yeah, and it can be hard. And the third wave of feminism is really just a response to the patriarchy, right? And
Mhm.
when we boil into the roots of the patriarchy, it's the male species fully believing that they are doing everything they can to keep everybody safe.
Yeah.
Even though it came out super wounded and it created all these problems, we've got the wounded masculine, and then we've got the wounded feminine responding, and then we've got an even more wounded masculine in their wounded feminine, and then we've got a super wounded feminine in their wounded masculine. And before we know it, we cease to exist because we stop co-creating, and like the population dies, and that's it.
No, it's true. It's so true. I think
Yep.
that brainwashing needs to be like erased, honestly, entirely. Yeah, what I've been learning is how to operate more in my feminine in other areas, especially actually I learned this at work yesterday. I
Mm.
normally have a way of kind of strong arming the men on my team, like the job that I'm still at, that I'm trying to very quickly leave. Um, and normally I do that, right? I show up very masculine and kind of like, no, you have to
Mm-hmm.
do this. Which could you imagine very small Sabby doing that? Maybe, who knows? But instead, I took a different approach. I operated more in my feminine and
Mm.
the results I saw afterwards were my team actually wanted to cooperate with me. Why? Because I
Mm.
wasn't trying to strong arm them. I was actually just trying to allow them to be heard. And I'm thinking, okay, what what is the person on the other end of this, whether they're male or female, what are they actually trying to convey to me instead of just the facts?
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Male energy, masculine energy is very logical, very pragmatic, very da 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 da.
Mm-hmm.
Female energy, feminine energy is very much okay, let's look at the feeling behind this and how do I operate with more intention and how do I flow through.
Mm-hmm.
Even on my morning call, this like the men want to tell you what to do because that's
Mm-hmm.
just in their like they want to problem solve. And I
Mm-hmm.
think sometimes feminine energies can take that as, oh, I'm trying to be controlled. Not, I mean, are they trying to like, are they holding you down and like suffocating you? You know what I mean? Like they're not out to get you or to harm you physically in that way, especially if it's in business.
Mm-hmm.
And then I saw this really cool sales video last night on TikTok of how you can sell as a woman in her feminine energy and how it's different than men. So don't try to
Mm-hmm.
sell like a man. You're never gonna do it.
Mm-hmm.
That's not how you operate. So just lean into how you are and then show up like that and eventually people will just start gravitating towards you and you'll start closing deals in a more efficient and like authentic way. I'll
Mm-hmm.
send it to you. It was really cool. When I
I
saw
would
that, I
love to
was
see
like,
it.
yeah.
Feminine business, and that's kind of the way that I run my business is definitely a very feminine construct of like, I'm not pushing sales. I'm not
Yeah.
a penetrative source. I am sitting back, I'm being seen. And again, it's dropping that handkerchief, right? It's
Mhm.
like if I want someone to approach me, and for those who can't see, I'm turning my back towards them and I'm just
I'm
not looking at
imagining
them,
you in a Victorian dress. Just,
right? Here I am in my Victorian dress. There's a nice person over there that I want the attention of, but I'm turning my back to them. They're not
mm,
going to approach me. But this handkerchief is like literally it's body language. It's turning my whole body towards them, maybe even being scandalous and opening my legs towards them, or my shoulders, or my heart, right?
yeah.
Opening up like this and looking at them and being seen, making eye contact, smiling. And that's, how I run my business is like, you see me online every day. I'm
Yeah.
offering, I'm open, I'm here, like nourishing people with my wisdom and what I want. And then they come to me. You
Mm,
email me or you DM me or you book with me. I'm not out there being like, who wants to buy from me? Who wants to sell from me? I'm not a penetrative force that way. And so what a lot of people could do and what you could do to play with this, because I love how you're kind of like bringing this into your work a little bit, like throughout the day we are in a different energy
mm,
every day. You know, when I wake up, I'm meditating, I'm journaling, I'm drinking my coffee, very feminine, right?
Yes.
And then like at noon, I'm like on calls, coaching people, giving sessions, having meetings with my assistant, getting my work done, you know, working on my website. I'm very masculine. Then like I'll take a break, you know, maybe I'll go swim in the ocean, go for a walk. I'm in my feminine. Then
Mm-hmm.
I come back home and I'm like, I got to clean up this whole house. I got to get groceries. I got to get my laundry done. All of a sudden, I'm back in my masculine, right?
Mm.
And you can kind of see, like, okay, what is my flow throughout the day? And am I actually flowing back and forth? Or am I super rigid and structured all day and never giving myself time to flow? Or am I way too flowy all day and
Mm.
never creating any structure? And that's where you can kind of try to find that balance just day to day.
So if I'm thinking about my day, it's very similar to yours, right? Like in the morning, I'm doing the same things. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna wake up to some music. I'm gonna put my coffee on. I'm gonna meditate, do all the things that I normally do. And then all of a sudden, it's masculinity. But you know what's interesting? I think I'm operating a little bit I go in between both at work, masculine and feminine. It's almost like, what am I gonna
Mm-hmm.
do that's not immediate right now that feels good where I can operate and get it done in that way? But then it's still like a masculine way of doing it, of structure.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's like my ADHD brain is going, oh my God, ADHD is just kind of like flowing and doing what feels good half the time. I
Yep.
wonder if that's like femininity. I don't know. That's very outside the box, but yeah, I do that. I definitely do that, which is kind of cool. And I think it's good that you brought that up because people don't look at their days and think, "Oh, am I in my masculine and in my feminine in different moments in my day?" They're just like,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, today I'm in my masculine." It's like, well, "Are you?" You know, it's
Mm-hmm.
like I'm willing to argue that if you're doing something that feels good, then you probably aren't. You're doing something that's probably in your feminine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up because the way that I kind of structure my days, like anything creative is in your femininity. And a
Mm.
lot of us have to do creative work during the day, right? Like if I have to write an email or an Instagram post or make a design, that's creative. That can't really come from a masculine energy, or it's just not going to translate well. It's just
Yeah.
not going to convert, right? So like for me on Mondays and Fridays, I don't take calls. Mondays are masculine. I meet with my assistant. I get all the fucking work done that I don't want to do, all the back end bullshit that I have to do, like bam, 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 whip it out. I just go really hard on Mondays. Fridays, I start my day with a swim at the ocean. I go to a coffee shop. I usually work on my podcast editing, my writing, and like those are my creative flow days. I don't
Mm.
have to do anything on Fridays. It's my open space to allow things to flow because I don't know about you if you've been like working on a creative project and you're like,
Mm.
I need to do this, but it's like not coming out. And it's
Yeah.
because your masculine is trying to be creative when your masculine is logical and structured and can't be creative. So that's when you have to like let go, flip around on your pole a little bit, let yourself get into your feminine energy. And then that creativity will start to flow. And I think
Mm.
for people who do a lot of creative work, like that can be what's so hard is that like you can be in your masculine every day and wake up and boom, boom, boom,
Mm.
get shit done. But if you have a lot of creative work, it's not always going to come to you
Yeah.
when you want to turn it on, you know?
No, it's true. I actually was thinking that this morning because after my long ass break from my platform, it felt good to finally make a tea time again and sit down last night and just do it, but it came from a very different space. It didn't come from I need to get this done because I need to upload it because and then X, Y, and Z, you know. It was more
Mm-hmm.
of no, I'm creating something that I enjoy, and I'm doing it because I enjoy it. And because I created something from the enjoyment and the creativity flow and what felt good, I ended up enjoying what I put out instead of like nitpicking at it and going, shouldn't have
Mm-hmm.
done it. It's like I rewatched my own tea time about maybe 12 times and I sat there and I was like, damn. It's like you're so fucking savvy. You're so smart.
That's because it came from, and I think especially when we're making content, you know, like it has to come from a place of inspiration. It
Mm.
really does, because that's what translates. Like the feminine is chaotic, spontaneous, flowy, you know, she just does things because they feel good. And when we make content from that space and put it out, people feel it.
Mm.
Whereas if we make content and we follow some guy's like 5 steps to get a viral
Yeah.
Instagram reel, everyone's going to be like, oh, that was weird. What is Sabi doing? Like, why is
Yes.
she being so robotic and like formulaic, you know? And
Yeah.
it's
I
probably not going to do very well, you know? Energy
no.
is important when it comes to these kinds of things.
Yeah, like I think like you said too, to if you want to be seen, that's being in your feminine, right? Allowing
Mm-hmm.
yourself to be seen. It's the same
Mm-hmm.
with making content. If you don't show up with an open heart, and we've talked about this a long time ago, but if you don't show up with an open heart, people aren't going to be very receptive to you. They're going to
Mm-hmm.
wonder what the hell is up with you, and then they're going to go, oh, okay. But if they're in that same space, then they kind of resonate with you, which is fine,
Mm-hmm.
because people need what they need at that moment in time. But so, okay, words. What inspired you to start leaning more into sharing your experiences and helping people with the masculine and feminine energies? Like, what prompted you to be like,
Mm.
I want to come into that space and help course correct a little bit?
Oh, I love this question. Around the time that I came out, I was reading a lot of books about, neo tantra, erotic tantra, just kind of very curious about these things, especially because, I mean, I won't say just queer people. I think most people have very like oppressed sexualities in general. So I was
Mm.
really curious about kind of what this wisdom has to share. And as I was reading these books, I was like, okay, these are like very much made for straight people, like very much about man and woman together.
Mm.
And like they're not for me. But I was able to read them from like compartmentalize and like kind of make it work for me and make it make sense to me. And my first girlfriend, I was like sharing one of the books with her, and she got so triggered because it was so non-inclusive of queer
Mm.
people, and it was so much about a man and a woman. And I was like, oh, I didn't realize how like upsetting this can be to people that like this is not made for us.
Yeah.
And since then, for the past like 10 years, I've been looking for any queer leaders in the tantric space and just not finding anything. And I've continued my education. I've taken so many courses, so many classes, so many trainings. And some straight teachers out there are great at including queer people, and other teachers out there will say like, actually, queerness is unacceptable and like you don't belong here. I've had people say like, oh, the gays belong in kink actually. And I'm
Mm.
like, that's like makes no sense. But we can get into that on a whole other podcast. So,
I know. There's a whole separate conversation that has to be
right?
had.
Like that's a whole different conversation. But the more that I started to talk about sexuality with my students and see that like actually heteronormative neo tantra is still frustrating for people, it's still agitating to people. And the last course in polarity that I took, I was, again, the only gay girl there, as I've gotten used to. And they started talking about how, oh, when my man gets into his emotions, it scares me so much and I shut down. And the instructor was like, oh, don't let your man get into his feminine. He needs to stay in his masculine. And
Oh my
I was
gosh.
just like, what?
What?
No, I was like, you know what? I have learned enough about this. I'm not taking any more courses on this. I know what the fuck I'm talking about. I have read every single textbook. I know what descendants of Osho I like. I know what descendants of Osho I don't like. And I was like, you know what? I spent all summer researching and writing my own course on queer polarity,
Mm.
especially because I am a tantric Buddhist, and we don't talk about it in the forms of like sexual acts, but in terms of embodying masculine and feminine. And I was like, I already have this wisdom. And I got super brainy all summer, and I wrote an entire course on the history of patriarchy, third wave feminism, what queer polarity means, the history of neo tantra, and how to apply it to queer relationships.
Mm.
And about half the people who signed up for my course were straight people because they felt, held back by the Tantra community themselves.
Yeah.
So it's been really nice because, in the a question I get from like specifically bisexual girls that always makes me laugh is that like girls are so used to being pursued that when a bisexual girl likes another bisexual girl, they can never seem to plan a date because nobody will make
Oh,
the first move.
so in that space, I agree. I think like there's so much polarity that comes with sexuality and fluidity and your energy and how it combines with another person.
Mm-hmm.
I think compatibility can very much just come back down to that polarity in and of itself.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's why I'm, teaching girls like maybe you probably dated girls that were very much in their feminine,
Yeah.
and there might be some girl that approaches you that is so solid in their like, and that's what happened to me. I was like, wow, you're really in your masculine. This is very attractive.
Yeah.
But, she had me. She got me so quickly because I was like, oh, I've never met a woman that's like truly embodied in her masculine. There's tons of lesbians out there that are very in their wounded masculine, and we all
Yeah.
know that.
Yeah.
So I think queer people have really been embodying this polarity so effortlessly long before, straight people were, because in a straight relationship, it's all very obvious. But I have a lot of friends who are, especially like my bisexual friends who are very masculine women
Mhm.
that like to date very feminine men, and they don't want a
Mhm.
masculine man. And
Mhm.
that's the thing, when you're so used to being in your masculine all the time, like I have so many friends who are like this, and I was this way, and I'm finally softening a little bit, like, oh, actually, I don't need to be in control all the time. I don't need to be calling all the shots. It's exhausting. I would
Mhm.
love someone else to make the plan, and I would love to feel like I just trust them enough to make the plan, because it turns out I like being in my feminine. It actually is kind of nice.
It is. It's
Yeah.
exhausting to strong arm
Yeah.
anything, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
It really
Yes,
is.
it is.
I learned that actually last night in pole class because I was trying to learn a friggin' upside down damn trick. And my teacher verbatim told me, she goes, "Why are you trying to make it a lot harder for yourself by trying to strong arm it and just use your strength?" And I was like, uh.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had this deep internal realization of like, oh fuck, I'm in my masculine right now. I'm not in my feminine.
I
And the
love it.
second I switched that off and I was like, all right, I'm just gonna trust my body, not strong arm it, not try to peacock and show off and try to be the best at it, is
Mm-hmm.
the moment I got it.
Yeah.
Um, and that's when those beautiful moments I think in our lives do happen in any relationship or like with ourselves. Like you said,
Mm-hmm.
like doesn't really matter who you meet, but those beautiful moments that happen when you start to soften and lean into those parts of yourself that you've been neglecting, I think
Mm-hmm.
is just very mind blowing and I don't know, it's very beautiful.
Yeah, and that's when we can start to, heal the wounded feminine that we're living in, heal the wounded masculine that we're living in, because a lot of times a woman being over masculine is just her woundedness, or a man
Mm,
being over, you know what I mean? And that's where we get really depolarized with each other, is that like we're not actually embodying the energy that is most authentic to us. I think that everybody has a little bit more of one or the other in
yeah,
them, because that's how the universe works, right? The sun rises and the moon sets. Like,
yeah,
I think a lot of people get confused, like, why does there have to be one or the other? But like, the universe is a yin and a yang energy. It's a positive and a negative ion. Like, it's science essentially. This is how it
mm,
works. And I give a little science class on my first day of Polarity 101, so that it's not so woo woo. It's like actually how the universe was made.
yes. And you have to, this is gonna sound so damn cliche, but you do have to find the yin to your yang and like vice versa in that
Mm-hmm.
energy, but obviously in healthy, healthy masculine, healthy feminine, but in different
Mm-hmm.
parts of your life. I think like if you clash in certain areas emotionally, you're not gonna say you have someone who's in their feminine emotionally and you're also in your feminine emotionally, that's gonna be
It's a disaster.
be an absolute disaster.
Exactly.
You're gonna be
Yeah.
waiting for each other to pursue each other. I mean, you're not,
Mm-hmm.
that's
Mm-hmm.
not how it works. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So for anyone listening, like, this is a little experiment you can do throughout your day, especially when it comes to relating with others, is like, oh, I see that my friend is crying. I'm gonna like get really strong in my body and like solid and non-emotional. That's the
Mm,
key, is to not feed into their emotion and be like, hey, are you okay? Do you want to talk to me? Like, what's going on? Or when you're feeling really emotional, instead of reaching out for that friend that is always depressed and always crying, that's just gonna put a wet rag on you and make you feel worse, you reach out to that friend who's like very strong and emotionally solid and be like, hey, can you hold space for me? Like, I got a vent, and feeling yourself, oh, I'm going into my feminine right now. Like, I'm so emotional. Like, or I'm going into my feminine right now. I'm so creative and chaotic and I feel a little crazy and I'm all over the place.
Yeah.
Like starting to notice which energies that you're in, because it will either polarize or depolarize the people that are around you.
Mm. That's really good. I like that. I tend to gravitate towards people who do something creative in some way too.
Mm-hmm.
Because I want to be able to relate to them. If they
Mm-hmm.
really like music or art in some way, shape, or form, for me that's attractive because I feel more connected to them in that way, and then I feel safe to like also share those parts of myself with them. So,
Yeah, like a masculine person who can access their creativity through art or creating music or writing,
hmm
it's such a good sign because it's like, oh, you have an outlet for your feminine side
yes.
and you're not afraid of approaching it. I have this history of dating hyper masculine athletes who like never have that outlet, and then it comes out in these like erratic emotions, right? And
Yeah.
so we want to find people who do have that balance,
Yeah.
and who can help us feel balanced when we're together. That way it's not like, oh, I found my other half. It's like
Mm.
we're both whole people, and then when we come together, we're like this supernova of more wholeness.
Yes. Yeah, 100%.
You're listening and you have felt inspired by anything I've shared, come find me on Instagram. I only launch my course Queer Polarity once a year, so I'll launch it this summer in like June or July. I launch like 6 different programs a year, so come and find me, check out my work, get a reading, whatever you want. Like, there's all kinds of ways to come and play with me. You can come listen to the podcast I've made with Sabi on my
Mm.
show. And yeah, it's been really fun to be back. I love your show. I love what you're doing. I love the whole vibe. And it's fun to be here and talk about polarity. I love jamming on this shit.
Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you ever want to chat more about anything that this podcast is about, you know where to find me. I'm on Instagram, Twitter, and good old TikTok. And be sure to stay tuned for my Tea Time with Sabby episodes. If you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or YouTube or whatever streaming platform you happen to be listening to this on, I encourage you to follow, like, subscribe, and rate this so that it pushes it out to whoever else might need it.